buddy Nevin Mulholland is not here. I suppose he's off somewhere drinking heavily because Anthony Rizzo has been traded to the Yankees, for God's sake. I just do not agree with what the Cubs are doing. I know you're not a big baseball guy and probably not a big Cub guy, but this has got to be a story, at least for me and a lot of other Cub fans around here. This really shows the difference in the two teams when you start having you get off to a bad year and you have some people who are coming up for contract, and your response is to start trading everybody so that next year you really have nobody on the roster to carry you forward. The Yankees, on the other hand, are very aggressive. They keep going. They had a crap first part of the year. And still they're trying to pick up a left-handed hitter that can give them some power. And Rizzo's only 31. He's going to give it to him. So I just do not understand the Chicago Cubs.
Well, they pretty much traded their whole infield, I think. Because I think
I don't want to even hear they traded Baez.
Yeah, I was just listening to ESPN on the way over here, and they were saying that they think Baez is gone. I can't remember where they said he was going. He's going to the Mets. And Bryant, they were predicting, was going to go to the Giants. And Kimbrough, they said, was a done deal. He's going to the Chicago White Sox.
That's the core of your team. They're gone.
Yeah.
So and they're not old guys. Bryant's probably about 30 years old. Maybe not even that.
Oh, no. I bet he's in his early 30s. Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. It's just, well, they've had 2 or 3 mediocre years since their World Series run. And
I don't get that. They, especially they did not come back in 2017 after their big win in 2016. And I don't get that at all. And, they got rid of Joe Madden, which I don't consider to be a great move. They brought in David, the catcher, I forgot.
Ross.
Ross, thank you very much. Nothing personal against Ross, but he hasn't done much with the team. And he had a good core of players.
Well, baseball, in many ways, I know baseball purists will disagree with me on this, but in many ways, baseball is an individual game. I've got a bat in my hand. There's a pitcher with the ball. Right. It's mano a mano, pitcher against batter. And then, and so if you're not hitting the ball, if you're not getting good pitching, you're going to get beat. And for some reason, those Cubs hitters who used to be so darn good have just been pretty mediocre in the last year or two. And I've always liked Rizzo. Was my favorite player on the Cubs. They always called him the captain, I think.
Oh,
and boy, that hurts when you trade the heart of your team. And I know Rizzo wasn't having a great year, but that's the one that got me. I could see getting rid of Bryant, and I don't know about Baez too. But boy, Rizzo was the first one to go, and boy, you just hate to see you lose the team captain. So
is that sure about Kimbrel and Baez?
That's what it sounded like on the ESPN. Now, I'm just going on what I hear on ESPN, how much I trust them. These days, I got a kick out of Bob Bowlesby's comment about ESPN and what they've done to that whole
Big 12 conference.
Yeah. Big 12 conference, and what he claims to be, what appears to be, he claims he has proof of some pretty unethical actions on the part of ESPN. Surprise, surprise.
Well, ESPN does have an interest, a financial interest in the SEC.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
They own the SEC TV network.
Yeah. Yes, they do. And
so it's like the heck with college football and everything. We're going to do it out of our own self-interest. Of course, I've never been, that's a whole other story about me.
That's a whole nother story. But I think Bowlesby says he has proof, but ESPN's answer was pretty definitive in return, almost ridiculing Bowlesby. Oh, gosh. Well, no, that's not the case at all. And it's a big lie. And
they're politicians, and they're going to lie. I mean, if you're tampering, what are you going to say? Oh, yeah, we tampered.
So it was unethical and illegal, probably, but we did it.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. It's I hate to see the media creeping into the management of collegiate sports,
especially ESPN.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting enough, I've watched a lot of ESPN here last few days, just trying to see what they're saying. By the way, ESPN has not ever mentioned the fact that Bowlesby has stated. Now, maybe I just haven't heard it, but I've listened to a lot of ESPN, and I haven't heard them say one thing that Bowlesby made the allegation that ESPN was tampering with this thing.
Well,
Now, if you go to Fox Sports, they're saying it,
yeah,
but ESPN won't even, they don't even have the integrity to even say, well, this is what the Big 12 commissioner is saying. We, of course, deny it, but they won't even say that. You know, it's the typical mainstream media. We're not going to tell you what we don't want you to know. So, you know, and they
well, my source this morning was a website, The Athletic,
yeah,
which is a great website.
right.
They kind of get off into Wokeville every now and then, which would be a situation with ESPN. The ESPN is famous for, I don't know, we want to make sure there's enough transgender athletes in all the sports. I mean, they're a very woke entertainment network, and that's not going to fly in the SEC. It
No.
just isn't.
No.
I mean, that's the old Confederacy, for God's sake, and they're still. And I don't want to hang that on them today, like anybody in the South still believes that slavery was ever a good thing. But what I'm saying is that ESPN and the SEC don't really seem to fit, in my mind. And I particularly am concerned about what happens to the Big 12. If this happens, and it's supposed to happen in 2025, I think it's over for the Big 12.
I do too.
I think it's done with.
It's really too bad, but I think you're right, Mike.
Could they get Colorado back, or who else would they try to get?
Well, the problem is in order to attract a team to your conference, you've got to pretty much convince them that the amount of money they're going to get from the conference is going to be at least comparable to what you've been getting, if not more.
Of course.
And that's the Big 12 is not going to be in a position to be able to do that. So I just don't see any them being able to pull in a Colorado or maybe a Missouri. I just don't see that happening. That there's and not to say that the Pac-12 is all that strong, because I saw the numbers the other day. The Pac-12 was divvied out $32 million the last couple of years. The Pac-12 was $38 million. I think the Big Ten was like $56 million. And I think the SEC was around the same as the Big Ten. So, and they're predicting that with this new alignment with Texas and Oklahoma, that the contract that the conference, the SEC is distribution is going to jump up to maybe, $70 million or more. And when you're at 38 million and they're saying, hey, come over here and get 70 million, I guess they're going to do it. It's interesting because the Texas Regents, Board of Regents approved it. And they control both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's president just came out publicly and just ripped Oklahoma. I mean, not Oklahoma. Yeah. Oklahoma's president came out and ripped Oklahoma big time for, doing this and destroying, because this really hurts Oklahoma State. And I guess it was the Texas, I got to mix up, the Texas Board of Regents did that, was unanimous. I haven't heard about Oklahoma's Board of Regents, whether they're going to approve it. I assume they will, but talk about a political football there, no pun intended, but down in Oklahoma, when you've got Oklahoma State saying, this is bad for us, don't let them do it. And
well, I trust what Rob Jones says. I mean, he's taught me by his example, and he's really an authority on sports information. And he told me a week or two ago that there is a law in the state of Oklahoma that Oklahoma State and Oklahoma have to be in the same conference.
wow.
Now, if Oklahoma's leaving and Oklahoma State isn't, that means they don't have a state law, of course.
Right.
But I wonder about that, if that's going to come into play, because Rob just isn't wrong like that. I mean, he lived in Texas for a while. He was a Texas radio broadcaster.
I've heard that. I heard that about Oklahoma, and I also heard it about Kansas. I don't know if it's true, but I also heard that Kansas and Kansas State was the same thing.
And what happens with Kansas, by the way? And I think Nevin asked this question last week. The Big 12 dissolved. Where do they go?
Well, the rumor is that Iowa State and Kansas would go to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And that leaves K-State, in a pile of dust. I don't know. And there's stories out now saying that the Big Ten doesn't get anything. They don't get any. They don't really get anything by bringing Iowa State and Kansas in. There's one of the stories is if the Big Ten wants to go big to compete with the Southeast Conference, they need to go out and raid USC, UCLA, and they were talking about California and Stanford and bringing them into the Big Ten. And bringing in those kind of prestigious programs with a lot of TV sets. And
I'm surprised they have that view of Kansas. I mean, Kansas has not been good in football for a
been
long time,
horrible.
but they've been having a great basketball
Great
team
program.
for years.
Yeah. But unfortunately, football's driving this whole thing.
Mhm.
It's driving the whole thing. And Kansas brings nothing to the table other than a guaranteed W on your schedule, which
Yeah.
isn't all bad.
yeah, I understand that, but basketball and football are two revenue generators. It wouldn't work out for the Big Ten to have Kansas because of Kansas' superior basketball program. The basketball program alone couldn't carry them into the Big Ten.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I think if they go to the Big Ten, it was because of their basketball. It wasn't because of their football.
No, and I don't know what happened to them. It looked like they had a good coach, Bill Self, or what? Not he's the basketball guy, but who was their coach?
They had when they were having their success at Kansas, they had Mangino, the big heavy guy that ended up at Iowa State for a year or two. But was it Mike Mangino? I think, but. He had some success at Kansas, and they
Well, he was fired.
They fired him.
He was only at Iowa State a very short time under Rhodes, and there was a big. He seems to have a personality that just conflicts with that coach.
He's kind of a gruff old dude, and I think he got fired at Kansas because they claimed that he was abusing his players.
Could be. Rhodes fired him. Coach Paul Rhodes at Iowa State fired him as well. So then he goes down to Kansas. For a head coach job.
No. It was the other way around.
The other way. Excuse me. You're right.
Yeah, he was.
Whatever happened to that guy? I wonder.
I don't know, but I don't think he's in coaching anymore after the Iowa State debacle. But,
nobody wanted to touch him.
Yeah, no, exactly, but it'll be interesting to see how this thing shakes out because right now they're claiming that Texas and Oklahoma are gonna have to stay in the Big 12. Till 2025.
2025.
That's 4 more seasons.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
I can't see that happening. And believe me, every time they go on the road, they're going to get booed like crazy.
Without a doubt.
And so they're not going to want to stick around in the Big 12. So somebody, the SEC or somebody's going to George Soros or somebody's going to pay off the contract.
Somebody. Yeah, but truth be told, Texas and Oklahoma, they're just not the national powers they once were. I mean, what they have is a crazy fan base. I mean, football's a religion in those states. But Oklahoma, when Barry Switzer was there and the big rivalry with Kansas, those days were long gone.
Well, rival with Nebraska. Yeah, it was Oklahoma has won the Big 12 now like 6 years in a row. So, I mean, in the Big 12, they've been dominating, but they've been embarrassed in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, that's –
yeah.
And they can win the conference, certainly. I didn't mean to say that that's why.
But you're right. Yeah.
That's why I hesitated.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing. Okay, you're Oklahoma and Texas. Take Oklahoma. Okay, they're going 10-3, 11-2, 12-1 every year. Okay. Now you jump into the SEC. Now you're going 6-6.
Yeah.
So does that help your program? I mean, does being 500 in a really outstanding conference, or maybe going, 7-5? I mean, will the fan base in Oklahoma put up for that for very long? I mean, so there's a downside to being in a super conference where everybody is really, really good, or most people are. Man, then if you're Oklahoma, it's like, man, now all of a sudden we might be seen as being mediocre, in a really good conference. Would we be better off being really good in a mediocre conference? And
you put into words what I was trying to say. That's exactly it. I don't see Texas and Oklahoma dominating the SEC.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's just not going to happen.
I
they
agree.
may dominate in the Big 10 or Big 12, but it's not happening here. I mean,
Yeah, and they wouldn't dominate the Big Ten either. I mean,
well, Ohio State certainly isn't
no,
afraid
exactly.
of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I don't know. It'll be interesting. The thing that just irritates me is, and I guess I know I'm getting old, Mike, but all of this change just bugs me because I don't think it's changed for the better by any means.
It's
And-
changed based on money,
Right,
but again,
exactly.
I think they're making a mistake in the long run. Texas and Oklahoma, they want to be a national power. They want to be seen in the same breath as Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson or Oregon even. I don't know how I don't know how Oregon's program's done the last couple of years, but they've had some outstanding players and outstanding success out there. So I'm a little confused as to their motive. It sounds like
It's all money.
an ego, and an ego, big time ego.
And I think they feel like, what's I think drove Texas to the SEC was Texas A&M. They hated the fact that Texas A&M left the Big 12 and went into the SEC because they've always treated Texas A&M as kind of the, our little brother. And then all of a sudden, little brother steps into a much better conference and has elevated themselves. They got Jimbo Fisher down there as a coach now. And so.
Yeah, this is not Darrell Royal's football team in Texas anymore. That's Texas is in Oklahoma and Nebraska are all suffering from the same syndrome. They look back and say, look what we were.
But the thing about Texas, which I don't understand, is they had, Iowa State beat Texas this past year.
Yeah.
And I remember the announcer saying that Texas had 54 players on their roster that were 4- and 5-star recruits. And Iowa State had 4.
Really?
So when you have 54 players on your roster out of 90 that or out of 85 are 4- and 5-star recruits, and you're still not winning, that's perplexing. And Oklahoma is kind of the same way. I mean, they're getting a lot of 4- and 5-star recruits as well, and yet, when they go up against the real big dogs, the Alabamas, the LSUs, and people like that, I mean, they've been pretty much humiliated, and so, yeah, it's kind of funny how they haven't been more successful, especially Texas. How they haven't been more successful over the last, ever since Mac Brown left, and he had that running quarterback. I can't think of his name now, the big guy.
Somehow we lost your microphone over there, Randy.
Is that right?
Yeah, we better switch to that one, I guess. I don't know. It just went. I mean, it's on, but it just left. There you go.
This one working?
That
all right.
What the hell happened there?
I think maybe the what is it? The Federal Trade, or what is it? Federal. What commission are you under? They must have shut me down.
Federal Communications.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
they didn't like what I was saying.
There's been a lot of snowflakes writing letters to that. Get that guy out the air. He hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
That is so pathetic. That is just, I don't even, you and I could get started on that. We'd be off and running for a week. I remember, a long time ago, I was reading a sports magazine. It was an article about Barry Switzer. And Barry Switzer recruited a lot in Texas. And he had a rapport with black players. And he went to Texas. The author went along, the author of the article. And he talked to this kind of disinterested kid from Texas in a restaurant down in Texas. And when the kid left, Switzer told the author, he'll come, and the author said, well, you got some running backs. And he said, I'll draft 15 or 20 running backs and I'll make defensive backs out of the ones that aren't good. He said, tonight I was looking at a defensive back.
Yeah.
But those were the days. Those were the days for Oklahoma.
And those were the days when there was 120 scholarships.
Yeah.
And so the power.
What was wrong with that?
The powerhouse teams could load up with players. Many times they would recruit players because they didn't think the player would ever play for them, but they didn't want them to play for their rival.
Right.
So they'd recruit him anyway when you had that many scholarships. And so I think when they narrowed the scholarships down to 90 and then now down to 85, it's created more parity because now all the really good athletes just can't go to one or two schools. They've got to,
but that is the reason. That is the reason why the Iowa State wrestling program, which was terrific under Harold Nichols, of course,
right.
They have cut down, and I don't even know the number, but they have cut down the number of kids eligible for scholarships.
Yeah.
At the Iowa State wrestling program, that they've made it really difficult on Dresser. Dresser, to his considerable credit, by the way, he's an old Humboldt boy
right.
as well. Dresser, to his considerable credit, has finally got a team that he can put out on the mat, and they can compete probably with anybody. That's what the sports writers say anyway. And we're going to take a break now. We're with Randy Coleman. We're talking sports, and Evan couldn't make it for whatever reason. Again, I think he's crying in his beer over what the Cubs are doing, and I'll join him shortly. But we'll come back and talk about Iowa State's chances because Matt Campbell's got a great team.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at JMike1400.
It's 4:31. The news is next.
Blue Ribbon, Pelham Waters, your water pro since